Kia ora koutou and welcome to the Greater Wellington Business Growth and Support Virtual Conference. My name's Angela Caves and I'm the Digital Events Manager with Digital Boost. It's a pleasure to host you this afternoon. With me, I've got my collaborating partner, Janine from Connected. We have had 2 wonderful days of the conference and all of those sessions are available for post-event viewing if you missed them. We'll be distributing a playlist at the end of each session out to you so you can re-watch the session that you were registered for, or you can view the playlist as a whole. I'd also like to welcome the people who are viewing via live stream on either LinkedIn, YouTube or Facebook. I'm going to hand over to Janine, who's just going to run through the format of the webinar today, and then we're going to introduce our guest from Employment New Zealand. Thanks, Janine.
Well, thanks, Ange. Kia ora, welcome back, everyone. Before we start our next session, I just have a few housekeeping notes. Throughout the session, you will be able to see and hear us. However, we are not able to see or hear you. Therefore, if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please feel free to pop it into the chat box or the Q&A box. And if you look down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see those 2 options there, and we will do our very best to get to those questions through the end of our presentation. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Vinod Daya, Senior Engagement Advisor from Employment New Zealand, who will be sharing his wealth of knowledge about the range of support and service they can offer in the employment law space. Over to you, Vinod.
Kia ora, ladies and gentlemen, everyone watching the presentation live and recorded. My name is Vinod Daya and I'm a Senior Engagement Advisor. I represent Employment New Zealand, which is part of MB. Before we start, we would like to thank the organisers for Connected, Janine, and Digital Boost, Angela. And for those who are watching live and watching recorded, thank you very much for attending. It's an honour and privilege to be able to reach out to you all. Today's little journey that we're going to take you on is, as an employer, how to help you become a fair and compliant employer. And the benefit also with that can also help you to become a more profitable and successful business. So let's take you through the slides. Here we go, we're Employment New Zealand, and you can see here we're part of MB. Today's topics, we're going to explain how Employment New Zealand can help you. So great news, we've got lots of tools, information and resources to make it much easier for you to be fair and compliant. And they're all free, they've all been paid for by the taxpayer, and we encourage you to use them. This is the little steps we're going to go through in our journey today. We're going to introduce Employment New Zealand, look at some rights, responsibilities, resolving problems, tools, resources, information and support. And if you've got some questions at the end, we're happy to have a look at those too. In terms of the questions and feedback, we're hoping you could pop them into the chat, please. So if you add it to the chat, and we will discuss at the end of the talk in the Q&A part. For the questions, we can provide general information, and for feedback, some of the things we're interested to know a little bit about is so how we can provide you with a great service as valued stakeholders. What support do you need to comply with employment and health and safety responsibilities? Thank you. This is what really Employment New Zealand is about, what we believe in and what our vision is and how we want to contribute to New Zealand with you. So we believe in fair business and fair workplaces. Fair workplaces. Our work is about lifting compliance and capability in workplace relationships. And our vision is for workers and workplaces to realise their potential. So we really appreciate you watching this presentation to help us on this mission. About Employment New Zealand. Hopefully you would have heard of Employment New Zealand before. We are out there in the public. We have an Employment New Zealand website, Employment.govt.nz. It's very popular. We have lots of publications online and printed, as an example of one. We're very active on social media, over 200,000 followers on Facebook and in LinkedIn. We've got some public facing services which have their own profiles, employment mediation services, which we'll come to later, and the Labour Inspectorate, which we'll also come to later. So these are the teams. When you're thinking of Employment New Zealand, there are a lot of people here who are available to help provide the public a great service, helping them to become fair and compliant employers. First of all, the service centre. This is where you can call if you can't find information on the website, you'd like to clarify your options, etc. And it has a toll-free number, 0800 20 90 20. We have early resolution and mediation services. So a lot of the time, problems you may have in employment about rights responsibilities can resolve early and voluntarily, and these services can help. The Labour Inspectorate, Labour Standards Officers are part of the Labour Inspectorate, but Labour Inspectorate is more the enforcement side. So you often see the Labour Inspectorate in the media when there's been a non-compliant employer, some sanctions have been put against them. They've gone through like a process such as gone to the ERA or the Employment Court. They're found to have some issues, and that information is put into the public domain. Employer systems and assurance. We try and be strategic. We try and embed the employment law requirements into systems and processes so they become business as usual. And this is the team I am in, Employment Information Education. We're a small team and we work across New Zealand to help bring you information about your rights, responsibilities, and all the resources and services we have for you. So you can see there's a lot of people here who are available to help and providing that mission towards the fair workplaces. Now, while most employers are very fair and reasonable, there are some common issues in employment and they do arise. So just let me take you through some of these. First of all, we often find there's a lack of employment agreements. So the employment agreement is a foundational thing for a fair and legal employment agreement. Employees must be given a draft agreement before when they're offered a job and signed it to accept it. The agreement must be kept on your files and made available if someone wants to see it. And also it should be kept updated if there's any changes. So it's a key foundational document. Casual contracts. So it is legal and lawful to hire people on a casual basis, sort of maybe aligned when you have work and when you need the person. But if that work changes, like the work pattern changes and the person becomes like an ongoing employee, such as a part-time ongoing employee, that becomes a permanent employment relationship. And then the employment agreement should be updated to reflect that. Contractors versus employees. It's perfectly fine to use these two different methods to hire a worker, but they must be used in the appropriate way. And some employers regretfully hire workers supposedly as contractors to avoid the employment obligations, and that's illegal and not acceptable. We'll come to that later. Then there are rights around annual leave and other types of leave, such as sick leave, bereavement leave, etc. Public holidays. One of the things is if someone works on a public holiday, they must always be given paid at a rate of at least 1.5 times their normal rate. And there are other things that apply. We'll come to that a little bit later. Redundancy and resignation. So fair processes must be followed. Employment exploitation. So unfortunately, that is an issue in the community, and often it is migrant communities exploiting other members of their own community, and we'll also expand on that. And also some common issues is about people's rights, responsibilities around COVID-19 in the workplace. So the great news is that we have lots of information around all these common issues to clarify what your rights and obligations are. First thing we have to decide is we're a small business and we're looking to hire people. We need to have a good understanding of who is an employee. So I'll take you through a definition, and then I'll also take you through some legal tests that you can apply. Here we go. An employee is anyone who has agreed to be employed under a contract of service to work for some form of payment, including wages, salary, commission, or piece rates. So includes more than just wages and salary, commission, and piece rates. Employees include full-time, fixed-term, seasonal, casual, and part-time employees, employees on probationary or trial periods, home workers, and people who have been offered and accepted a job. An employee is not a self-employed or independent contractor, a volunteer who does not receive a reward for working. So in practice, trying to decide between an employee versus contractor, sometimes it's quite clear and sometimes it can be a little bit challenging. So the courts have issued some general tests that you can apply to help clarify the situation. I'm going to run you through a little example and see how we can apply it to help bring some light to this situation. So here we go. First of all, you focus on the real nature of the working relationship, and you use these legal tests to help you tell the difference. So imagine we're all in a business together and we're going to hire a gardener. Intention test. Is the aim for the worker to be an employee or self-employed? A contract for services rather than an employment agreement implies a contractor. Control versus independence. Will they be supervised? More control over their work, hours, and methods implies an employee. Integration. Will they be part and parcel of the organisation? And if no, then it implies an employee. And the fundamental economic test, what is the total situation? So if the worker will work for many businesses for fees, this implies a contractor. So if we go back to the first point, you have to go back to the real nature of the working relationship. If you're still not sure, we recommend that you get some professional advice or reach out to New Zealand. We can clarify what some of the rules are, and we also have some services that can be of assistance. But highly recommended that you get this work status right at the beginning to save you problems down the track. Now, as we said before, the employment agreement is the foundation of a fair, compliant, legal employment relationship. And there's certain things that this contract must have. All employees must be given a written employment agreement. And these are some of the things that must state. Must talk about the names of the employee and the employer, the job description, which is the duties, what the person will do, their place of work, hours of work, remuneration, including wages and salary, time and a half, which is a minimum that you must get for working a public holiday, employee protection provision, which applies to certain industries to cover vulnerable workers, and what the process is for resolving employment problems. Good news is we have a fantastic tool that generates employment agreement templates for you, and I'll come to that later in the presentation. Now we want to turn to what some of the key minimum employee rights are. So when we talk about minimum employee rights, what that means is that these are rights and obligations which are in the employment law and they can't be contracted out of. We can't cover everything today, but we'll cover some of the main ones to give you a good flavour. It's very important that you're aware of these. So the minimum wage, which for adults is $21.20 per hour, and this has been in effect since, this is the latest rate since the 1st of April 2022. There's also a trainee rate and a starting out rate. The adult rate applies to all the employees who are 16 years and older. Public holidays. So now we have 12 public holidays per year. And recently we all enjoyed celebrating the first Matariki National Public Holiday. And that brought us from 11 to 12 public holidays per year. And what we said before is that a worker who works on a public holiday must at least be given 1.5 times their normal pay rate, And if it's a day they would normally work, they also must be given a day in lieu at a suitable time as well. Annual holidays. So a worker gets 4 weeks paid annual holidays per year after 12 months. And there's quite a lot of extra rules around that, like how much leave has to be taken certain times and if someone wants to cash up some. But this is the key point. 4 weeks paid annual holidays per year after 12 months. And that's so workers can get some rest and relaxation to look after their well-being. Also sick leave. This was recently increased and now it's 10 days per year after 6 months. As we're heading into winter with the COVID situation, it's really important. Bereavement leave. So after 6 months, the worker gets 3 or 1 days bereavement leave. 3 days is if the person who passed away is a close family member, so a brother, a sister, a wife, a child, that kind of thing. And the 1 day is if there was a special relationship with the person. Say it was someone who was your uncle, cousin, or in your whānau, and you would discuss that with your employer to get that 1 day of bereavement leave. Domestic violence leave. Unfortunately, if our employee is a victim of domestic violence, then they are entitled to domestic violence leave, which is 10 days per year after 6 months. And employees are entitled to rest and meal breaks, which depends on the number of hours worked and what's practical. So in the legislation, there's a table that you can go to, and depending on the length of the shift, it will tell you what those minimums are. But imagine, back to our situation, we've hired our gardener and definitely an employee, and they're working a standard 8-hour shift. So we typically give them a morning tea and an afternoon tea and a lunch break, okay? So for the 8-hour shift, the minimum rest and meal breaks would be the 10-minute break in the morning and the afternoon, and that would be paid. So that would be paid rest breaks. And then in the middle of the day, they're allowed at least 30 minutes for a meal break, and that would be unpaid. And that sort of time is to make sure that people get lots of the appropriate amount of rest and relaxation, food, and do some of those personal things that they need to do. It's very important. Unions, all employees have the right to join a union. And dismissal and redundancy, which is about employees losing their work, different situations, a fair and proper process must be followed. Some employer responsibilities. Employers must provide employees with a written employment agreement. I know that I'm stressing that, but that is a key thing to note. They must provide employees with a safe working place. So that's the right tools, the equipment, and the supervision for them to be safe at work. Employers must not bully, discriminate, or racially harass employees, and this means also having a workplace that supports this. And they must follow a fair process of taking any disciplinary action. Finally, they must maintain wage and time records and holiday and leave records. So one thing to remember about setting up your business, think of those 3 words: records, records, and records. Make sure that your systems and processes are in place so you have all the records, and then if you're visited by a labour inspector or IRD, or you have contact with the likes of ACC, etc., you know that you'll be in a good place, and it will save you problems later. Our website has a lot more information about what sorts of records are required, but the key thing is just get your systems and processes up to date so you're following the proper record keeping. By having the proper record keeping, you can make sure that you're compliant with the law. Addressing migrant exploitation. As I mentioned before, unfortunately, migrant exploitation is an issue in the community, and it's a high priority area for the government. So new measures have come into force since the 1st of July 2021, $50 million in funding in total over 4 years. There's a new visa to support migrants for up to 6 months called Migrant Exploitation Protection Work Visa, help encourage people to come forward with complaints. And there's a dedicated 0800 number and a web form. So for more information, visit the Migrant Exploitation page at Employment New Zealand. There's also a new temporary visa called the Accredited Employer Work Visa, and AEWV for short. And for more information, please visit the Immigration New Zealand website. Fair pay agreements. So this is something that's in the pipeline and you should be aware of. It could make some major transformation around the sorts of minimum wages that have to be paid per industry sector in New Zealand. Let's run you through the key points. The government has introduced fair pay agreement legislation into Parliament, and public submissions closed on the 19th of May. The fair pay system will bring together employers and unions within a sector to bargain for minimum terms and conditions for all employees in their industry or occupation. New Zealanders will soon have the opportunity to make submissions to comment on the bill during the select committee process. The FPA system is expected to commence shortly after the bill has passed, and it's anticipated to be at the end of 2022. For more information, see Fair Pay Agreements at MB. Resolving employment problems. An assumption in employment law in New Zealand is that both parties should work together in good faith and try and resolve problems early whenever it's practicable. So if a problem arises, the employer and employee should discuss this as soon as possible and try to resolve it. And then if you do have a problem, realize there's different ways and different options. If you're not really sure what the right channel is, come to the Employment New Zealand website and we've got information on what you can do. And if you're still not sure, give the service centre a ring. Some of the pathways our problems are held is that the smaller minor problems, early resolution should try and get in early with a voluntary resolution. Mediation is more of a formal voluntary process. Labour Inspectorate is around the enforcement side, fines and sanctions. Employment Relations Authority is part of that legal process where things go to the ERA, and the next step from that is the Employment Court. And when it relates to human rights matters, it goes to the Human Rights Commission. So the best thing to do is just basically, if you have an employment problem, Google resolving employment problems on the Employment New Zealand website. If you're still not sure what the right channel is, just give us a ring and we'll be happy to guide you on the right options. But please try and discuss your problems as soon as possible to try and resolve them. Next, we come to early resolution. This is a new service, highly popular and highly effective. So we're just wanting to bring it to your attention. It's a way of resolving problems in an informal way, talking to the employer and the employee, trying to work out something voluntary. And let's just look at what it's suitable to cover. So it covers an employee, when an employee has an issue about their working arrangement, hours, pay or leave that they may have changed without them being consulted, if the employee has health and safety concerns, if their employee's employment has ended or may be ending through restructuring, redundancy or dismissal. If the employee feels they have been treated unfairly or being bullied. As an employer, if you have concerns about your employee's performance, if either the employee or the employer feel there's an issue that could be resolved promptly by you and your employee or employer with a little help from an independent resolution facilitator. And the service can also help with some current COVID workplace issues. Employment mediation services. This is a very highly popular and effective service to keep in mind. It's based on a mediation as a voluntary process. It's when an independent mediator helps the parties to work through issues and develop solutions together. MB has a free service that's quick and has an 80% plus resolution rate. And after trying to self-resolve, so if the two parties can't, it's a low-key way to try and resolve any issue. Employment mediation services. There's more information on the Employment New Zealand website. So you've got a sense now of the landscape. You've got some employment issues. You've got some rights and obligations. How do you get the information so you know what to do? Well, the great news is that Employment New Zealand has lots of tools and resources. Let me take you through this. You can see over here, here's a news item. So that comes from the website, which is a very highly popular way of getting information, probably your first go-to source to get the information. You can see here, we have some videos too, Employment New Zealand there, Facebook and LinkedIn. You could recommend that you follow us on social media. We have 200,000 followers. That's a really good way to get your information into small bite-sized pieces. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter. We have something like 175,000 readers of our newsletter, and that's a great way to get those updates sent to you. And also the Employment Agreement Builder. It's a very popular tool. It's been out for a few years now, and it's had more than 1 million uses. So just go to our website and pop in Employment Agreement Builder, and it will take you to the tool. You can basically create your own template. Or tell you what the mandatory clauses are. You can choose from the recommended clauses, and you can save it, and then you know you've got a legally compliant employment agreement. Then we've got the publications. Here we've got a whole range of them. This is one, the minimum rights responsibilities. It's about 10 pages covering minimums. It's good for you if you're running a small business. And here's one, knowing your employment rights, which is the kind of thing that's good for employees. You can find this in the minimum rights part of our website. So you can see in total, we've got lots of free information, tools there that can help you. One of the key things that we also have a suite of employment learning modules. So you get 24/7 free access to information and learning at your fingertips. And each module takes about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. Let's run you through this suite of learning modules, which we encourage you to do. So we've got entry-level modules for employees and employers. Recently, the employer module is released. We encourage you definitely to check it out. We've got advanced modules on topics in employee and employer versions. So these topics below, there's a simple one for employees and a more simpler one for employers. Highly recommended for all small businesses to do when you get time. Let's run you through the topics. Working arrangements, so that's that foundational stuff about like employee versus contractor. Employment agreements, that foundational contract. Pay and wages, hours of work, annual leave, holidays, other leave, so sick leave, bereavement leave, and how to resolve problems. So by completing the modules, it's going to help you because you'll know what you don't know, when to get help, and it can help you. It can help avoid you having those problems before they grow big. Here you can see here, this is what the dashboard looks like. You register and then you get your own dashboard. There's mine up there. And if I toggle here between that little arrow, I can see all the employee or all the employer modules. And you can see here that you get a certificate. So I did the Introduction to Employment Rights one a while back, and I got a certificate. So if you have managers or staff you want the modules to do, you can get a learning record to say that they've completed that particular module. Finally, just as we wrap up, we're going to run you through where you can get more information and support and services. So for information, just always keep in mind Employment New Zealand, visit our website, Employment.govt.nz, or Google Employment New Zealand. We've got links there for latest COVID information. We've got links there about minimum rights and responsibilities information. And here's a link for the information above that's translated. And often our resources are translated in many languages. So it's very useful if your staff or your employees, English is not their first language. Here is talking about where you can get more help in the support side. Once again, contact Employment New Zealand Service Centre for general inquiries. We've got a free telephone interpreting service, 0800 20 90 20 toll free. And if you're supporting somebody, just note that we cover over 180 different languages through the interpreting service. And keep in mind the early resolution, it's free, phone-based, resolve employment matters early, quickly and informally. And there's a web page, pop in early resolution into our website, our search engine, take you to the information. Finally, just like to conclude with any questions, and I'll hand back to Janine and Angela.
Vinod, thank you very much for that wonderful overview. There's a huge range of information and resources for people to refer to on the website. So I do encourage everyone to have a look around the website, where you're sure to find the information that will help and support you. And those learning modules are a great tool as well. So thank you. We do have a question that's come through. So we look here. If someone has a fixed term contract that stated no sick leave because it was for 6 months only, and then the contract is extended or another fixed term contract was issued for another 6 months on that subsequent contract, should they now be entitled to sick leave?
So simple answer is that sick leave is in the legislation. So that basically an employee after 6 months with the same employer is entitled to the sick leave provision. So you can't contract out of sick leave. Yeah.
There's one other question here. Recently, there's been a discussion about the notion of good faith. Where can people go for guidance on that, and what does it actually mean?
Well, thanks, Janine. I love that question. It's so fantastic.
It is. It's a very important question, actually.
Yeah. So we can run through it. You know, if we're talking about a house of employment rights and responsibilities, at the bottom, you've got the legislative stuff, right? Which is that employment law, the minimum stuff you can't contract out of. Above it, in the roof, you know, maybe the ceiling kind of thing, you've got the contractual stuff, what you agree to above the minimums. And across everything is a principle of good faith. And that's noted in the employment legislation, always applies. So that means it's about the employer and employee being open and communicative and honest and dealing with each other. So that's the spirit of what's being intended. The employee expected to come to work, do the best job that they can, be open and honest in any concerns and issues they may have, and the same thing vice versa with the employer. For a bit more technical type definition of what those words mean, just go to the Employment New Zealand website and pop in the words good faith. But I was just trying to give you a bit more simple and practical example. Right. Open, honest, communicative, yeah, other sort of key things to think about with good faith.
Excellent. One other question, what age is considered an adult for employment, and at what age does the minimum wage start at?
That starts from 16 years and above, and if you pop in the word minimum wage into the Employment New Zealand website, you'll see the different definitions and the different rates as well. Yeah, but 16 years and older is entitled to the minimum adult wage.
Well, that's all of our questions for today, Vinod. So thank you so much again for your time. And back to you, Ange.
Thanks, Janine. Yeah, thank you, Vinod. It's been wonderful to have you here and some good questions asked there. So thank you for, sharing your wealth of knowledge from Employment New Zealand. I know you've been on a few conferences with us through the regions, and it's always wonderful to have you back and hear something new or hear the updates. I think is really important. Things change so often. So thanks again for joining us and sharing all about Employment New Zealand. For our audience who are watching in the webinar or on a live stream, if you are in business, looking to go into business, or just needing some direction around business support and have no idea where to start, please head over to Connected. That's exactly what they're there to do. They're there to be able to be that conduit of connection and point you in the right direction for whatever support your business needs. For Digital Boost, just a recap on why we're here to support you on your digital transformation journey. If you are looking at, creating your website, trying to optimize the results of when people search for businesses like yours on Google, if you are looking at some productivity tools, please use the free platform that is Digital Boost. And that will help you take an assessment and take stock of where you're at with your digital footprint, and use the free diagnostic tool Checkable that is available to you as well. That does bring our session to a close, so thanks again for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you this afternoon. Up next, we do have business.gov. If you want to attend that session, please head over to Connected and register there, and you'll be able to join us at 3 p.m. And then final session of the day will be Digital Boost this afternoon at 4 o'clock, so we look forward to hosting you then. Thanks for joining us. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.